Alright, third time's the charm. So, what I have for you guys here is a text-to-speech application that I made in about 3 or 4 days. Let me just go ahead and demonstrate it real quick. I'll just type in a random sentence. So as you can see, it's not really that good, but it's good enough where you can tell what it's trying to say. So the interface is pretty easy. I just create a new window, I create a button, set its location, as well as a text field. I just decide to make it to where the window cannot be resized, and then I show the window. There are 2 action listeners, one for each button. There's not an action listener for the text box, but that's just because I don't need it. So next up is the sound files, which is over here. This function just loads all 45 sounds, but the 45th sound in this array is actually just a recording of nothing, just to put a space between each word. That way it doesn't just sound like, I don't know, I guess garbage. The make sounds class. Now this is interesting because I actually spent like 3 or 4 hours on YouTube trying to find a way to play just any kind of sound file, just any of them. And I could not find one tutorial that worked. I finally went on to Stack Overflow. It took me about an hour of looking around on there to find this play sounds class that worked. And honestly, that's about the end of it, because I have no idea how this works. I did add a is playing boolean to this, but it ended up being useless, and I just have not deleted that yet. But I do plan on dissecting this and figuring out exactly how it works in the near future, because I would love to do more applications that involve sound. So when the program first starts, it starts up by loading the sound files. Then it calls a function called thread, which just initiates the thread and creates the thread object. Right before the thread is actually started, a test sounds function gets called. I create an array of integers, which calls a function called breakdown in the class word breaker, and it just takes in the string that you entered from the text box. I'll go into this function a little bit later. So after it gets the list of integers, which the integers are just representing the index of the sound files here, it then goes to save this array of integers into a new text file called letter sounds into this breakdown class. So this breakdown class, it does basically exactly what it sounds like. So it takes in a string of text, which is the text that you entered in the text box, and it completely breaks it down in a sentence. Effectively, it's just creating temp strings that are just substrings of the original text and just testing to see if it matches any of these double letters, and if it's not any of the double letters, then it tests to see if it is any of the single letters or just a space. And keep in mind that the vowels in this code is still not correct and probably never will be, because honestly I got it working good enough to where you can understand it, and that is where I'm calling it with this project, because English is not my best subject or language, and it's also the only language I know. So yeah, I refuse to program the English language more unless I absolutely have to. And a way that I would consider me having to program this more is permanently lost my voice. So after it tests that, of course there's this extended array function that every single one of these calls, and that extended array function just does exactly what it says. It takes a integer array, extends it by 1, and then saves the index of whatever sound that called it into the last part of that array. And that's where this gets the list of sounds. Now, as for how the thread actually gets these sounds, because that was interesting to figure out, I spent like a good 2 hours trying to figure out how to get the list of sounds into the thread. Turns out that's more difficult than I thought. Well, I ended up having to, this is why the file manipulator class that I made a while back ended up its way into this project, despite the fact that despite the fact that it has all these functions that's not being used. So all the thread is doing is it's loading the files from the text file, and then it's searching for those sounds within a data folder from that file. And then there's this while loop in there that says, hey, while it's playing, just sleep. That way it doesn't start playing all the threads at once, although I did test it without this while loop, and it doesn't need this while loop. So yeah, there's a lot of redundancies in my code. I have not bothered to fix them yet, and I will refactor it eventually. But yeah, I believe that sums up everything for this. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, quick disclaimer. I do have a skateboarding channel, so if you guys want to check that out, link is in the description.